देखना है जिंदगी कहीं ये मेरा माजी तो नहीं। एक साया आ रहा है इस तरफ बढ़ता हुआ। गैर का क्या जिक्र, राही गैर तो फिर गैर हैं। इस ज़माने में कोई अपना भी कब अपना हुआ। वॉइस ऑफ इंडिया के स्टूडियो में मैं हूँ योग गुप्ता। आप सबको मेरा आदाब, नमस्कार और प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल। वी हैव वेरी स्पेशल गेस्ट इन अवर स्टूडियो, ए वेरी सक्सेसफुल एंटरप्रेन्योर मिस्टर सचित मेहरा। मेहरा जी, आपका हम वॉइस ऑफ इंडिया के स्टूडियो में हार्दिक स्वागत करते हैं।
Gupta Saab, Namaskar ji, Sasikar ji, to all the listeners out there. It's a pleasure to be here.
मेहरा साहब, एक कोविड की सिचुएशन अभी जो एक्सटेंड हुआ है ना?
आज ही
How you
announcement.
take it?
Well, the announcement just came. आज ही announcement हुआ है 2 घंटे पहले. Look, the first announcement for shutdown came October 30th.
Yeah.
आपको पता ही होगा. For restaurants, hospitality was the application.
Non-essential.
Non-essential. और तब भी मैंने बोला था कि in Manitoba, in Ontario, आपको पता है that the variables that you use to do the closure, वो जो variables हैं वो change नहीं होने वाले. And so here we are January. मेरे सोचने में है कि ये shutdown मार्च तक चलेगा, आराम से चलेगा.
Do you think it works? Shutdown करके क्या cases down हुए?
So the reality is we now have time and experience to see what has worked and what hasn't worked. This is not the first shutdown. We are now, if you look at between Manitoba and Ontario, you're on your 4th and 5th shutdowns of different cycles and different scales. And the reality is, we can look back at what has been in a good way and what has not necessarily been a good way. And it's unfortunate to say, but the shutdowns unilaterally and in a binary option have not worked. And that's unfortunate. If they had worked and there was a circuit breaker that you could do that really stopped people, then we wouldn't have these scenarios that we're seeing in Quebec and we're seeing in Ontario and Manitoba. The case counts would have gone down drastically. The reality is, by shutting down restaurants and small hospitality and retail on October 30th, we should have seen an absolute progressive decline. Instead, the numbers stayed the same, or they've gone up. And what that leads us to believe at the end of the day is we haven't found the source of where this is coming from. We can anecdotally, figure it out that it's probably happening from people meeting at home, gathering at home in private situations. And so the question from there becomes is, how do we combat that? It can be through education, it can be through awareness, but the reality is we really need to put in a pressure blow-off valve. And so that comes back to restaurants and small retail and hospitality. Instead of using these businesses as a liability to the system, we should have used them as a resource to the system. Let's allow the establishments,
because the restaurants they are following the guideline, they are maintaining the social distance, they are keeping the track of the people walking in.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's it.
Restaurants are among the most highly,
especially small and medium-sized business, and in the hospital, and that's devastating for them too financially.
Highly regulated, highly inspected, highly licensed facilities that have contact tracing, that have downloaded protocols from the public health officials. And
quite often they walked in, health inspector.
Of course, and that's the idea. And so what that allows is people to come in a very limited capacity, to meet, to congregate, but also at the same time to be contact traced. And I think that's the most important thing. But for people, it allows that desire from a mental health standpoint to meet, to congregate, to celebrate, do whatever they need to in a very limited capacity, in a controlled scenario, and it takes the pressure to want to have to meet at home or in these environments where those regulations aren't in place or being followed. And I think that would have been something that would have helped the scenario from where we are right now on both sides of it. But this is something new. We're all learning. We're all living. We're all moving.
We all
through.
gone through with that stage.
That's
Do
it.
you think the financial assistance available from the federal government, did it help?
So there was
To what extent?
3 levels of government that really had to play for business when it came down to COVID. There was from the federal government, we had the provincial level, and then you had the municipal level, and each level could have played a role. On the federal side, their responsibility was to make sure that businesses were liquid, still had money, that people still had jobs. or they had the assistance to be able to get them through to the next side. And so this really just meant cash outlay. And they did that. And so the federal programs, by and large, were very successful. Those that didn't work, for example, the rent assist program, they listened to consultation, they changed the program, and they re-implemented to much more success. On the municipal side, really, there's not a lot of levers there. I think, from the mayor's standpoint or some councillors, they can advocate that people, enjoy local business or dine out at local business or frequent local business. But there's not a lot of levers there. Maybe some business
Did
tax.
you pass on that concern to the mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. I had an opportunity to speak to the mayor, I believe, just last month. And, we had a bit of a lengthy discussion just on things that were going on in the city. He's been very supportive. He's been our place a number of times throughout the pandemic. He's understood the desire and the need for local out there, and he personally has been a great advocate, and I think that's fantastic. I think the last jurisdiction where there was a lot of role to play was on the provincial side as well. And there I think we've got some opportunities that we could
But
still
so many
still
businesses
capitalize
closed
on.
on too.
It's been unfortunate. What we've seen in the last 10 months, I think, is only going to be compounded by what we are now going to see in the next 6 months and 10 months. Because what's happening now in the next 6 months is the fact that the recovery will not be V-shaped. People are expecting a bounce back immediately. It won't be. It'll be a U-shaped recovery that will last anywhere from 24 to 36 months, by my estimation. Anybody that's expecting significant additional supports from a wage subsidy or any other program, those will not be there. Anybody that's expecting, additional protocols from the public health that are going to be somehow eased, they're not. They're going to be increased, and they're going to be downloaded to businesses that are going to be expected to follow them. And any costs associated with those are going to be the responsibility of those businesses. So expect all those additional costs and regulations and timelines to be the onus of business. And so what's going to happen is, for businesses that were already struggling and made it to this point, the next 6 months are going to be that much more difficult.
What do you think, how long it will take to get the thing back to normal?
So in my
8 months?
Yeah, तो मुझको भी अभी इस काम में 28 साल हो गया, 28-30 साल होने वाले हैं गुप्ता साहब. अभी उस 28 और 30 साल में मैं कोविड क्राइसिस को, क्या बोवाइन क्राइसिस को, फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस, 2000
You have seen all those stages anyway.
2008 का आपका SARS क्राइसिस था, and जिहड़ा मतलब SARS crisis is probably the closest thing we can see to this particular crisis. And SARS was really, for practical purposes, something that was, bound to very small parts of the country in a limited fashion. And that took 3 years. That took 3 years to recover from a public confidence standpoint, which is a key variable in all of this. And, if you look at what this means for us today, you're probably looking at 3 to 5 years minimum for a bounce back. I was on a national conference call in May, and at that time I said on the national conference call that I suspect at this rate, if it's going this way and you're looking at the trajectory, and that trajectory has held through, that you're not going to see a recovery for 3 years. And I remember on the call there was a bit of a laugh around the call, like, that cannot be that long. And sure enough, senior analysts at Air Canada just released their financial picture last month, and that those analysts did not predict a return to normal travel till the first quarter of 2023.
Oh, I see.
So we're spot on. We're 3 years out. It's going to take that long. You have to hold on. Don't expect these peak numbers. Again, it goes back down to the main variable here is public confidence. If people are not feeling confident to go out, to spend money, to travel, for all those different variables, then I think, for business, it's going to be difficult. But not only for business, this also filters back down to government as well. And I think, for the jurisdictional governments in Manitoba, in Ontario, in BC, wherever, those governments are going to be, judged on their success simply by what's going to be on their fiscal books. And what's going to be on their fiscal books is whether those businesses are around to pay PST, keep the people employed, spend the dollars, and keep the suppliers going. And so it's going to be very easy to see which jurisdictions have had a successful run and made some good decisions, and those that have not. And I think you're going to see that in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. Recently, you have been interviewed by the national media. Tell us something about it. It was very exciting, though.
So I think, there's been a couple of them. Just 4 days ago, I did Radio Canada en français. So, थोड़ी French भी आती है either. So that was a discussion. And 3 weeks ago, I did one with Rosemary Barton on CBC National.
CBC, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a national broadcast, and it was fantastic. And really, these discussion, there's a lot of hesitation among senior business people about what the direction of business is and what the timeline for business is, and it varies by person that you're talking to. Liberal people, small L liberal people, will tell you that they expect recoveries in the next 3 to 6 months. I think that's premature. I think you're going to be looking at easily the next 12, 24, 36 months to recover from. So those are some discussions, and then certainly, what's happening. Aapko pata hai, you've been a business owner for 30 years, and we are small business people right now. We can tell you on the ground right now for people coming back and doing business, it's tough. It's very, very tough. What's going to happen to restaurants when they reopen? This was a discussion point that came up. And I think, first of all, I think for the dining public that's going to go back out, they're going to see less variety. When they go, less variety in terms of where they can eat at. There's been so many restaurants that have closed. You're not going to find the same, maybe your favorite Italian restaurant, maybe your favorite Indian restaurant. I don't know if they're going to be there or not. So these are difficult. When you do get to the restaurant, don't expect all the favorite dishes that you used to have access to at one point necessarily being on the menu. Why? Because the supply chain, and aapko pata hai supply chains kaise chalte hain, transportation, overnight.
And everything adds up, yeah.
Of course. Just take tomatoes, for example.
Few things are not easily available. Some which is available cost is so high, very hard to maintain the cost too,
We priced out tomatoes. Tomatoes normally go for $30 a case. They're upwards of $68 a case right now. So for the guy at the Italian restaurant who's making tomato salad or fenugreek tomato salad, how are they going to, put that into a menu and still charge you reasonable price? So those items might not. So there's going to be less restaurants. There's going to be less variety inside those restaurants. So this is, something that I think people are going to have to get used to, at least for the interim period. Over the next 6 months and 12 months, whether that can improve in a dramatic fashion or not, we don't know quite yet.
What kind of message you want to give to the small and medium-sized businesses?
If I could talk to, and I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of businesses here and there over the last 12 months. I've done a number of YouTube videos and interviews and national calls with other business leaders. Hold on. Hold on. Do the things that you've been doing right now to get you through. And there's been a number of things. Talk to your landlord. Save your capital where you can. Try not to touch your reserves. Access absolutely every grant that you can. There's been new grants that have come out. Access them. Advocate. And that means whether it's at your MPP or MLA level or MP level. Call those people. Nobody knows your business.
What role Chamber of Commerce is playing now at this time of crisis?
So there's been three associations that pertain to our restaurant business. The first, of course, is Manitoba Restaurant Food Association. They've been very good. You've had Chuck Davidson out at the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce. They've been excellent in terms of advocating. And then you've had Lauren Remillard at the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. And they've been, all three of those gents have been very good in terms of listening, advocating on business, understanding what's going on, and really disseminating information out to their different members. So I have only kudos to give those association people. They've been just phenomenal, and they answer calls at all hours, or they'll put calls back in. And they've been excellent for connecting to different people and different issues as they've emerged all there. So, but it's been a tremendous issue. It's like trying to, put a house fire out with just a bucket of water or a teacup, right? It's going to take a very long time, but you got to keep trying, and they've been doing that.
Sachit, thank you for coming and joining with us with such a short notice. We appreciate it.
A pleasure. Always good to start. Thank you very much to all the viewers.
Thank you for watching.